I literally start and noises start. Hey babe. I know, new look today. Don't worry. The chins, they're still in the building. This is just me and you having a casual chat, even though I did my hair. Week 11. Let's get into it. Okay, recovering a sense of autonomy for week 11. Miss Julia, she starts off talking about acceptance, really accepting yourself as the artist, feeling that freedom, honoring yourself, literally calling yourself, referring to yourself as an artist, which I don't think is necessarily like a new thing for maybe a lot of people, but for anyone who's struggled with honoring their artistry, it's really empowering to refer to yourself as an artist. I always remember in college, I knew someone who would put MFA at the end of their name, like on all their social media, like almost like you have like your MBA or your PhD or whatever, they would always put MFA. And I'm like, oh, did you get your master's in fine arts? And they're like, no, I'm a motherfucking artist. And I just love that. They're like, yeah, I don't care what I'm doing. I'm a motherfucking artist. So I feel like the first part of this chapter is about Julia saying, hey, empower, accept yourself as an artist. And as an artist, you're going to have processes and ways of being that don't look normal to most people, right? She's like, as an artist, you might find that working a 9-to-5 job helps you tap into your creativity and systemize it. You might find that it doesn't help you. It hinders your process. You might, as an artist, you wear that weird coat that you love so much. You collect little doodads, you go through a weird punk phase, you do all these things as an artist because you yourself are creating. And what this really highlights to me is actually discernment. It highlights the discernment of, okay, what does my artist want to experience? And how can I empower myself further to say, this is in alignment with my artist, and to discern this is not in alignment with my artist. And it kind of creates, I guess, boundaries in a way to say, more fully accept yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, creating these boundaries of discernment help you more accurately or more comprehensively accept yourself for your artistry, and to do so unapologetically. Some of my favorite quotes that she has is talking about the value of work. And she says, I have to free myself from determining my value and the value of my work by my work's market value, i.e., how much money it makes. I must learn that as an artist, my credibility lies with me, God, and my work, and I need to create what needs to be created. And this goes back to what I've been talking about a lot for me, which, well, it's a few things, is where is the source? Where is that source of truth in the quality of your work? And me realizing, that the satisfaction of feeling like my work really accurately represents the fullness of my being at that moment, or at least what I'm able to tap into in that moment, is my barometer for success. So I think there are some things in this chapter that I've dog noted for future successful Cass, where, like, putting it into perspective that my value is not determined by what the price point that the market might have for it, or the value of my work just period, like she says. The value really comes from the expression and to create what needs to be created, not necessarily to create because and it happens when you have a job to create because you need to create something, right? But honoring that instinct to see what wants to emerge from me, and And how can I find the value in that despite what the market might classify the value as? So that's one element. And then it also underscores the idea for me that marketing and like productization and strategy come after the creation. Sometimes it's like a chicken or the egg situation where we're like, okay, I have an idea of what wants to be created, and like, how can I refine this idea into a more productizable item or a marketable item? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But something I've been asking myself is, okay, how can I use the foundation of my business knowledge and use it in a way that fuels my creation and fuels it after the fact, or fuels it in the refinement process, not so much starting with a strategy first approach. And something that I realized that, because I've been watching a lot of videos on a lot of content creators, like how you can make content creation your 9-to-5 job and how you can really turn this into a business. Here are all the strategies that you need. You have to have a strategy first approach, is what a lot of these content creators advise. Not a lot of them, but I think something that I realized, I think they're at this stage of strategy because they already know what they're trying to say. They already know, they've already received the message, honored it, executed on the message of what they need to create. And so they're like, cool, how can we refine and make this more profitable? And I think that that's so important. And what I realized was that's very intimidating to someone who doesn't necessarily know what they want to talk about yet. And that's been something that I've been like reflecting on, and I don't want to say struggling with, but I've been uncovering, what is my message? And I have a few ideas. I have a bunch of ideas. I know the main ethos of what my message is. But when I hear someone give advice that's like, pick the niche, like get niche down, you got to niche down. That seems so daunting to me, because I'm like, how can I think about the strategy when I don't even know what the message is yet? Like, I need to come to peace with the message first. And then I can focus on the strategy and the refinement of it. And I think that's been a really fun experiment to participate in, right? It's been fun to say, okay, like, what is my message? Because I feel it so potently, just teeming under the surface for me. I feel like any moment, like, it's gonna come out and it's gonna be all guns blazing. So I'm kind of tangenting, but essentially this acceptance of myself as the artist, this moving forward in full acknowledgement of me as an artist, has been really empowering. And the constant reminders to place the value of my work on my barometer, which is really the divine and the God within me, to say this was fully like in capturing what I was feeling at the time and what I sought to experience, and to give myself that freedom to say, I'm going to create what needs to be created. And then later to say, okay, I have the message. How can I create a system of abundance that allows me not only to receive abundance, not only financially, but through a collection of experiences, connections, etc. But it's more so about creating that open channel for me to share abundance and then to willingly receive abundance, so that it's a fluid cycle. She spends a lot of time talking about money in this section, and some of what she talks about is like, you might be an artist that does very well or not. Sometimes you might have money, sometimes you won't. That's just the life of an artist. And I understand, obviously, the realistic expectation of that, to say, okay, like, I'm not going to put the pressure of money on my artistry. My creativity in itself is not congruent with money or finances, but there is just this also part of me that is like, you know what, babe, why can't I have it fucking both? Like, I'm not interested in just living a life of like being an artist, like, without thinking about the money, because that's missing out on like a huge part of life, in my opinion. And there is artistry to that. Like, there is creativity and artistry to business. And I think I've just personally tapped into that. But also, I think that that's a block that a lot of artists have, frankly. I think I don't know, like, maybe I shouldn't project onto Julia and say that some of the words that she uses makes me feel like there's this idea of what an artist is, the starving artist, and that's what it means to be a true artist. But I think that concept is true for some people, but I think it's kind of an outdated stereotype, because we see, and this is something that I'm constantly like tapping into more. I'm looking for affirmation. I find affirmation every single day in big and small ways that you can live a life as an artist and also be financially prosperous and successful. And I am proving that right within me, proving that true within me. And I want to be a living testament to that. Because if I can get as far as I've gotten without living fully in my artistry, without fully living within the God within me, like, it only makes sense to unleash something so incredibly powerful that it proves nothing but abundant in my life. Whew. That was a good one. Okay. Let me finish up by saying in this section, she says, the Creator made us creative. Our creativity is our gift from God. The use of it is our gift to God. And this is how we show devotion. That's something that I reflect on a lot, is how can I devote, how can I show devotion through creation today, by creating today? There's a really great section on success. And this section I've actually dog noted. I've like circled back on here. I'm like, come back to this later when you need it, because right now I'm like, okay, mental noted, but I haven't gone through the experience of success yet. So I can only sympathize, not really fully empathize, right? I don't know, some of the interesting things that she talks about in this section is, even if you found success from your art, it doesn't mean that you stop creating. She says, as artists, we're spiritual sharks. The ruthless truth is that if we don't keep moving, we sink to the bottom and die. Meaning, I think a lot of people find a listlessness when they've hit certain peaks in their career, and they're like, well, now what? I've spent so much time all these years trying to build up to this moment, and now what do I do? And the answer is, like she says, you just keep creating, which I love that perspective, because once again, it isn't, if what we're doing is just for success, then well, firstly, I really feel like you're going to live a very unhappy life, because what you're doing, the act of creating, is for personal satisfaction and gratification. And she talks about, okay, like, if you have to try new things when you hit like a new peak or a new level, and it's the willingness to become a beginner, to be creative and curious. And she said, okay, It is in this willingness, once more, to be a beginner that distinguishes a creative career. And this makes me think of a lot of actors and actresses, Ryan Reynolds, you know, a million other people who create businesses after they've hit their stride in acting and have made like a decent amount of money to put profit into. Actually, not even like, there are a ton of multifaceted artists who have expanded their creativity in multiple avenues. But it really makes me think of, you know, a lot of actors and actresses who create businesses and how exciting it must be for them. Maybe they feel like they're kind of like, okay, like I've done a lot of acting, and what is a new way that I can express my creativity and be a beginner again, like start anew again. Because it really is that process of learning something new and then cultivating a skill or a craft and seeing it improve that is very satisfying. And there's an acceptance in that, which is very inspiring to me, that is just saying, I might be bad at something right now, but just with enough time and attention, like, everything is learnable. Everything is figure outable. Everything is learnable. Like, all it takes is just the time and attention. And it isn't a matter of, it's a growth mindset perspective. It isn't a matter of, oh, I'm not, you know, being smart enough or being a genius or, you know, having a cap on who you are as a being. It's about developing it. And in this chapter too, I have a few things highlighted, of course, or in this section, I mean. Creativity is not a business, although it may generate much business. An artist cannot replicate a prior success indefinitely. She says sometimes we're asked to repeat ourselves and to expand on the market we have built. And as a successful artist, the trick is not to mortgage the future too heavily. And in this part, she's talking about, it makes me reflective of, you know, when you have like Green Day, they built something really awesome in their heyday. They built like a market for themselves as kind of pseudo pop punk music, and they found like their style. They built a market, people who were interested in their sound, what they had to create. And sometimes you see artists who build something and they become very well known for what they've built, and then they almost become like trapped into always producing the same thing that they created at their peak performance. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do reflect on, in this section, I reflect on that element of moving forward and trying something new, even if maybe the market knows you in one light, to allow yourself to be a full-fledged experience of a human being, to expand in different ways. And I think it's really powerful when a lot of artists, quote unquote, retire and then they enjoy their lives in simplicity and pick up, you know, crafts and hobbies that I'm sure a lot of us don't even know. You know, we don't know, well, maybe after watching like the Osbournes and stuff like that, like we know what Ozzy Osbourne was kind of doing in his day-to-day life. He was just chilling out. He was vibing, watching TV, like just being a dad, like stuff like that, and finding different forms of expression. And just because we might know an artist for one thing doesn't mean that that's the wholeness of who they are. Like, I don't know. I just want to hold space for that, I guess. Okay. The Zen of sports. This was my favorite section. Julia starts talking about how important the physical experience is to the creative process and to unblocking yourself. So, of course, this just makes me think of yoga, because yoga has been like the biggest form of creative expression and fulfillment and self-satisfaction that I have experienced in the past few years. Like, it's really what has ignited my creative artist within. It's given me so much space for just to find myself. And I know a lot of people can have that same experience in a lot of different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be yoga. But in this section, she's talking about how the body is integral to the experience of creativity. Excuse me, I'm having like a sinus thing. Okay, some quotes, tons of quotes. Most blocked creatives are cerebral beings. We think of all the things we want to do but can't. In early recovery, we next think of all the things we want to do but don't. In order to effect a real recovery, one that lasts, we need to move out of the head and into a body of work. And to do this, we must first of all move into the body. Physically into the body. Creativity requires action, and part of that action must be physical. Exercise combats spiritually induced dysfunction. Excuse me. She starts talking about moving meditation, right? How this act of physically connecting with ourselves allows us to tap into more than just our mind or clear our mind. It helps us to tap into the creative within us and the God within us, and it's quality time. It allows us to step outside of ourselves, outside of our lives, outside of whatever is going on, and to tap into the divine essence, the divine creator. And gosh, I love it. One thing that I really appreciated was she has a few stories. I don't know if some of the stories of people in here are like real people that she knew, or if they're just like stories that she's telling. But regardless, she tells a story of a woman named Jenny who starts running. And she says, although her distances have gradually increased and her thighs have gradually decreased, she doesn't run for fitness. Jenny runs for her soul, not her body. And even though I have like a very strong yoga practice, I mean, obviously, like I'm a teacher, and I just counted the other day, I've logged like 1,000 hours of yoga in the past 4 years. And it's been a huge part of my life, right? I also feel a very strong call to run, to physically run. And I've been ignoring the call, babe. Sure have. I've been ignoring the call, and I'm making active strides, literally, to run more in my day-to-day life. And it's requiring me to, once again, be a student, try something new, and start at the bottom, right? Even though I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm definitely not like a pose yogi doing like handstands and all kinds of stuff, but I've reached a certain level of like proficiency, I guess I would say, that maybe I take for granted in yoga. And now starting to run, I'm very much a beginner again. I'm starting like a new creative process, and it's bringing up a lot of new sensations that I haven't experienced for a while since I started doing yoga. Resistance, the challenge, what is my mind telling me? Because initially, right away, there's a block in my mind that's like, you're not a good runner. That's like the narrative that I've told myself over my life. And so I am like dissolving that narrative and overcoming that hurdle and practicing a new craft of running, which has been really exciting. And I'm trying to do it consistently. And sometimes that's hard. But she has so many great excerpts here about the nature of exercise. And this really made me so fired up. And I'm like, I'm gonna talk about this in my next class, because it's so true. She says, exercise teaches the rewards of process. It teaches the sense of satisfaction over small tasks well done. It teaches us, it's like a metaphor for our creative process, right? Rather than scotch a creative project when it frustrates us, we learn to move through the difficulty. Just like when you are physically exercising, there's always going to be a threshold and a barrier that tells you, oh, no, this is too hard, I can't do it. And it's always the mind giving up before the body does. Exercise is often the going that moves us from stagnation to inspiration, from problem to solution, from self-pity to self-respect. We do learn by going. We learn that we are stronger than we thought. We learn to look at things with a new perspective. We learn to solve our problems by tapping our own inner resources and listening for inspiration, not only from others, but from ourselves. Exercise means the act of bringing into play or realizing in action. What a beautiful like reflection. And I'm so glad that she talks about the physicality of the creative process, because I swear it also, and you know, this is something that might be like particular to yoga, though you can find the same effect in other like physical expressions, but there's also a release of like trauma. There's a release of all the tension that you're holding on to, the tension point in our bodies. It's reminding us and teaching us to breathe into those spaces, and through that we heal ourselves. And I think that I know that there are studies and there's a lot to be said about the body keeps a score, the physical ramifications of all that we've experienced and how it affects us physically. And to go through this exercise process it's been the most rewarding experience that I've ever cultivated for myself. And I'm excited today because I'm going to be doing my video on how my experience losing 200 pounds. But to put it into perspective, babe, I didn't work out growing up. Like, I was art kid. I was like theater kid. I'd rather be in the art studio. You know, I only did sports because I had to, because they were a requirement by the school. It was never something that I was like, yeah, I can't wait for that. So this experience of physicality has been truly transformative in my life, to the point where I'm now a fitness instructor. Literally, I do yoga, I do sculpt, all kinds of stuff, babe. I'm just teaching you how to breathe and move your body, and I love it. All right, last part of this chapter is talking about building an artist's altar. This is a space where you can devote to your creative, to the divine creative, and you can also build out rituals of devotion for yourself. This is a really powerful practice that I used to do a lot, actually, when I was younger, and I was more of, you know, I don't know, I was in a different phase of like my spiritual process and like building these altars. But actually it makes me really reflective of our apartment. Like this, I really consider the entire apartment is an altar to my creative. Like, there are, of course, things that I would love to do that literally, like, I just can't do because I'm in an apartment complex, like painting and stuff like that. But I can very confidently say, like, I've put so much of my heart and soul into curating this space, and it feels so authentically me and Eric too. Like, it isn't like there isn't bits of Eric here, but I think, you know, a lot of specifically women or people who take on the task of, you know, being that, I don't know, visual influence, I guess, in the relationship, if that's your dynamic, like, this space is filled with love, and every little piece of it is an act of devotion to my creative essence. So yeah, just every time, it's like my favorite thing ever. Slow mornings, just literally being in my apartment, you know, walking around here. Eric and I are literally here like 24/7, and I fucking love it. I love it so much. So sometimes I know when I was living like with my parents, or when I was living with friends or in San Francisco, like I was very big into curating my room to be my safe space. But I recognize a lot of people don't necessarily have that opportunity. And it is a privilege in a way. To physically have space is a privilege. So if there is like a way to curate some type of altar, like she says, something that's maybe even small, a little candle that just signifies every time you see it, it says it's an act of devotion to your creative essence. I think that is so valuable. Yeah, and I love it. If you're watching this, if there's anyone watching this, frankly, I kind of record these as like, I don't know, videos for myself. And hopefully, I really do hope that someday people watch and they find inspiration from it. But for the most part, like, I guess I'm talking to my past self. So I encourage you, whoever's watching / my past self, to build an altar, to build something that makes you proud of being an artist. Great week. Can you guys believe next week is going to be week 12, the last week? Wow, I'm so proud of myself. I'm on a mission this month to post something every day, to create something every day and post something every day. I'm trying to do a lot of short videos, and I'm trying to do it regardless of how I feel about it. And I'm really focused on waking up every morning and immediately tapping into my artistry, immediately being like, I have a job to do today, and that is to create. So far it's been very satisfying and very rewarding, and we're like 4 days in. So like, let's get through the end of the month, I guess, and I'll give you an update on that next week. But I'm hoping to use this as a big push forward and break from blockages and resistance and stagnancy. Whoa, can't talk. All right, let me move on. Week 12, recovering a sense of faith. In this final week, we acknowledge the inherently mysterious spiritual heart of creativity. We address the fact that creativity requires receptivity and profound trust, capacities we've developed through our work in this course. We set our creative aims and take a special look at last-minute sabotage. We renew our commitment to the use of the tools. Okay. Wow. That's it. All right. Bye. Love you.